George Boateng is a Southern Voices Network scholar with the Wilson Center's Africa program. He's also a research analyst for the African Center for Economic Transformation. He joins us to discuss regional integration in Africa. George, thanks for joining us.
Thank you, John. Thanks for having me.
I want to ask you first about this notion of increasing integration. What exactly does it mean? Are we talking largely about economic integration?
Well, on one hand, it's about economic integration, where we have trying to come together, African countries trying to come together to increase their market size, to increase their GDP so that they become more competitive globally. On the other hand, it's more also a political decision where African countries have to give up some sovereignty in order to move in that direction of economics. So it's two ways, if you want to look at it that way.
So it's almost like the EU giving up certain amount of sovereignty for a better gain?
Yes, I think it's more like it, but African countries are here to get there, and they are trying to be like the EU, and I'm optimistic they'll also get there and try to have that pooled sovereignty and go in that same direction.
And you've also written about maximizing the utilization of AGOA, the African Growth and Opportunity Act. First, tell us what the act is and what it's intended to do, and then we can talk a bit about what countries need to do to better maximize the results.
Yes, the African Growth and Opportunities Act, it's a trade relation between the US and Sub-Saharan African countries, comprising nearly 40 countries in Sub-Saharan African country. What the act wants to do is to try and increase Africa's trade or Africa's economic power in the global trade arena.
And is it working?
Well, it's working, but I mean, it's underutilized.
I think you've written that integration is increasing, but trade is not.
Yes, integration is increasing, but trade among African countries is not. There's a UN report which compares trade in Africa to that of Europe. For Africa, for Sub-Saharan Africa, it's just about 12%, but for Europe, it's about 60%.
Wow,
and the difference is quite clear. And going back to the question of AGOA, AGOA has increased Sub-Saharan African trade. I mean, it has tripled our export by over 300%. I mean, it has tripled our exports. But I mean, more can be done. It's underutilized because mainly Sub-Saharan African countries have not got it. I mean, they lack the supply side to meet the AGOA requirements, and also they are also not competitive in exports. Looking at production cost to export cost, we have about 12% for Africa. For Western Europe, it's only 4%, and for Latin America, it's 7%. Fundamentally, they are not competitive in exports.
So what are the policy changes necessary to increase these numbers? Is it about more investment in infrastructure? Is it training? What are the variables here?
Well, I'm looking at it more of a three-pronged approach. First of all, African countries must try and deepen their regional integration to be more competitive in export globally and to make export-led manufacturing the center stage. Secondly, I believe the US government should continue to expand on its Africa strategy and also increase capacity building to African countries. And thirdly, I believe the whole notion of competitive or global competitiveness should be something that African countries or African government must put on the forefront, notably to put export-led manufacturing in the center stage and to increase exports and to become more globally competitive going forward.
And so thinking of it in the terms of your recommendations, how much agreement is there among African countries that these are the things that they need to do?
Well, it's a notion that has been pioneered by most African countries. I think there's more and more there's the realization that going in individually will not be the way to go. But going as a regional economic bloc or together as a whole, the whole of the African Union will be more competitive. Looking at the current state of infrastructure and capacity in West Africa or even in Africa, it's quite low. I think most African countries accept this and are trying to work towards that. And especially with the coming to force, well, it's hopefully to be passed in 2017 of the Continental Free Trade Agreement, which gives Africa a larger market size or puts Africa in a very big single market. Looking at a GDP, combined GDP of $3 trillion, I think I think that the momentum is there, and African countries really agree that this is the way to go.
With this momentum, what are the products or the services, or where do you see the most dynamic opportunities where Africa or this African bloc, as you describe it, will be known for these certain products?
Well, I've always said that we need to increase export-led manufacturing, but where do we start? I'm looking at starting at textiles, garments, and also agro-processing. These are low-skilled manufacturing sectors. But looking at the current infrastructure, as I've already said, John, this is the way to begin. And I believe over time we can build capacities and move into high-skilled manufacturing.
And how long, George, will it take to get up to the full potential?
How long?
Yeah,
John.
I know that's a tough question, but it is trying to get it in some sort of sense. Are we talking decades, or are we talking that we're going to see dynamic changes in the short term?
I've always said I believe and I'm optimistic about Africa's economic transformation. And this can be done in the shortest possible time. We can do it in a decade, only if we come together and deepen regional integration and enhance economic reforms, as well as peace building. We can do it in a decade. But mostly, this transformation can go on and even build to bigger things in our generation, John.
Well, that's on that optimistic note, I want to switch gears and ask you more of a personal question about your experience here at the Wilson Center. I know this is next week will be your last week and you'll be heading home. What has the experience been like? Has it been useful to you?
The experience has been a very wonderful experience here. Looking at the resources available at the Wilson Center, the Library of Congress, and also meeting very prominent people in my area of expertise, reaching out and learning from them, also sharing my research. I've met people who I've talked to about the tool of AGOA, how they can maximize it, and how this horizontal and vertical integration could help. I've improved as a person of being at the center, and it's an experience I'll keep right close to my heart, John.
Well, George, it's great to hear that, because it's been a pleasure having you, and we wish you continued success and hope you're not a stranger around these parts.
No, John.
Thank you.